How's everybody doing? Made it here. I heard there was some traffic. I left my sword at home. I hope you don't mind. I think Joe stole one of my photos from Facebook or something like that. Figures it's a digital learning, right? So very, very happy to be here. My name is Prem. I'm the CEO of the Flavor Group, and I think today you're going to hear a lot of presentations around digital, obviously, but some very kind of technical, what to do, how to do, different activations, etc. I think when Joe kind of reached out to me, one of the things that he said was like, look, you were around with a lot of the beginning of, a lot of the first Scion activations. Can you kind of give some of that intensity, some of the love that you brought to the brand back then? And I think that's a little bit of what I wanted to start with, because Scion was a huge, huge part of the growth of my business. And then forward thinking too, some of the ideas that I'm going to get into around the digital aspect are a little bit broad, but are big ideas that I think make sense given this sort of presentation, and that we're under the umbrella of Scion, which was fundamentally transformative in that it was there as a testing lab. It was there to take chances, try new things, and that's a little bit of what I'm trying to give to you guys today. So, in essence, one of the big point here is really maximizing endorsements and influencers. So really, what are the goals of today? We're going to kind of define what an influencer is. A lot of you guys have probably dealt with traditional influencers, athletes, celebrities, potentially. We're going to talk a little bit about the new guard. How do you see who these people are? What do you think of them, etc. Going to a little bit about best practices when it comes to doing an influencer and endorsement deal. And then finally, just some high-level points on how you can potentially find a local influencer. But first, we wanted to give you a little bit of history into our love of Scion as a brand. So to talk a little bit, to take you guys back to 2006, as a business, Flavor Group started as an event marketing company. So we were doing a lot of big projects for Red Bull across the country, a lot of music, a lot of dance, a lot of performance, and then we noticed Scion. And I remember going to Hangar 1 in Oakland for one of their first really large activations in 2005, and saw how the brand presented itself, saw the intricacies, who they worked with, how they did what they were doing, and I was like, I need to work with these guys. This brand totally gets it, And I remember being in this event in 2005, and the event was immaculate, art on the walls, really great DJs, the whole thing. But unfortunately, nobody was in attendance, because event marketing was a very new thing, Setting up an event and making it look really beautiful, awesome. But how do you get the right people to actually attend? And that was a skill set that we had built as independent promoters, and that's actually why Red Bull started to work with us. So 2006 was one of our biggest pitches as a company ever. We went into the office of Attic, and we're like, look, here's what you guys did wrong. We don't need to spend a lot of money on newspapers or big ads. We just need to hit the people in the streets. We need to work with promoters. We need to do street marketing. We need to do posters on the, in venues, etc. And we got the business. And 2006 was the first event that we produced for Scion at Fort Mason, and it was called Expression. So as you can see, just from the look of the event, it was like, nothing you would ever see in a sort of corporate event. If you look just right away at the top left-hand image, that was the stage. And you typical kind of branded event, you'd expect to see a big banner or a big logo. What we actually did was took a Scion transport truck with the very iconic box-like XBs on it, and we built a translucent screen in front of the stage. So it was super clear that you were at a Scion event without having to say, hey, this is Scion. And that sort of detail into the environment and into the experience was consistent. When you walked in, you saw cars. These were cars of owners, and the owners were there talking to you about their cars, right? There was live art happening, and really importantly, there was a bunch of artists that they weren't being played on the radio. This was a mixture of hip-hop, this was a mixture of dance performance, this was live music, right? And that was a real key part of the brand. It wasn't saying, hey, let me go pay you a bunch of money. It was, let's find talent that really encapsulate what Scion as a brand is, right? Moving forward, as you can see, we had 3,500 people in attendance. The year before, I think it was like 550, right? And again, we did that with no radio, we did that with no big advertising. It was just with street marketing, knowing the community that would like this sort of event and really hitting them up. And it was a perfect Scion target market, right? Cool. So we've had a lot of experience with the brand. I just want to share some of the stuff that we've been really passionate about. Some of them are being able to wrap vehicles with world-famous artists. Scion got really involved with metal, so we got one of the best metal artists, guy Farron Norris, wrap vehicles. We were able to wrap, vehicles for regions specifically. Just really, really bold artwork that kind of fit the brand in general. Luckily for us, it's kind of, it was a dream come true, in essence, as an independent promoter. We were able to work with a brand that totally got it and book some of the most amazing artists and showcase those people to a really even bigger artist. And then also when it came to how do you take the brand and interact at festival environments, at events that Scion may not be producing themselves, but be creating so other people can experience the brand, right? Now I get to in essence, one of the most amazing things that I've ever been a part of, which was in, Marcus, you saw really quickly on the video. We took over Alcatraz as an event, and it was, it's something that will never be duplicated ever, right? Because they won't let you do it now that we've done it, in essence. So right when you, got off the boat, we had performers. You saw a huge Scion gobo, and it was very clear that you were in another world, right? We took the images on the left are the chapel of Alcatraz that were typically closed off to the public, but we convinced the federal government to allow us to not only redo the chapel, but build an art gallery with local amazing artists. And the cool thing about this was the gallery stayed open for 6 weeks. So an additional 20,000 people got to see this art on Alcatraz, and this was all made happen. This was all made possible by Scion, right? We had, in the hospital, we had crazy performances, right? Like crazy circus performances. So the whole thing was a very, very mind-blowing experience for a small amount of people, but what we quickly learned from the endeavor was that you do really, really great events, the sort of earned media that you can get is monstrous. Let me see if this will play. Looks like it won't. So Current TV was a huge cable channel, just recently purchased, but what we got was this event that had probably 1,500 people. Millions of people saw video content, all across the world about what Scion as a brand was doing to really engage an artistic community, right? And from our perspective, it really opened our eyes. Like we were working with these very influential people, these very influential artists, and we were able to put together an event concept that got a tremendous amount of digital exposure. Right? And so it really started our minds thinking about what to do next and, how to kind of take this to another place. So the early days of Scion, we learned a lot about influencers. And so I get to kind of define what an influencer is. But, now an influencer is relatively ubiquitous. It could be Joe Montana. It could also be somebody that you've never heard of that has 10,000 Twitter followers, right? To us, the analogy was working with this sort of artists. We also learned a lot about branded content. Not only did we produce a really great event, but that content was seen by millions of people because of the actual event, right? And finally, really driving earned media. There was we weren't of the mindset of how much money can we pay for somebody to cover our project. Does the project in and of it by itself have the value for it to be covered, right? Cool, so now I'm going to get into a little bit about, endorsements and influencers. So the reason why we wanted to talk about this, because to us it's kind of like the next generation of what we're seeing digital kind of go to in terms of moving from paid media to content creation. And one of the biggest reasons too is we've seen a lot of bad deals, meaning whether it be a dealership or some other brand doing a deal with a celebrity, et cetera, and what kind of happens? It's pretty expensive. There's really bad contracts, and there's no measurement. A lot goes into, hey, let's get this guy's face, but nothing else happens afterwards. So what we want to do is kind of talk through some best practices on how to do these deals. So what is an influencer, right? So there's a tried and true model of what an influencer is, right? You guys both know who these people are, obviously, right? You got Leo and you got Joe Montana. The celebrity, the athlete, the musician, right? Well, what also is an influencer? There's the new guard, and that's kind of what we wanted to give you a high-level view on. Who are these new people? Both these guys you've probably never, ever seen in your life, but their digital audiences and the power that they have is monstrous. And these range from international to national to local, right? So Zach King is an example. 2 million Vine followers. He's doing deals with Buick. He's doing a lot of brand deals because Vine is basically a 16-second video. And he's doing branded video clips that millions of people are not only watching, but they're sharing. So the paradigm is shifting from creating content and doing paid media for people to see it, to engaging with influencers that not only have the audience, but will produce the content as well, right? Kev Jumba is another example of a YouTube, star, 3.2 million followers. The guy was on Amazing Race, right? He's starting to do movies, right? So it's the same kind of idea. So really what happened, how do we go from athletes to these sort of, digital influencers? Well, the reason is social media. It's pretty obvious. And what's interesting is YouTube stars are more popular than mainstream celebs among US teens, right? Who would really ever expect that some person that maybe the majority of an audience might not know probably has more power than a Leo or a Joe Montana, right? And this is Variety that said it. So what are some of the things to think about? And this is why am I really bringing this up? Because we feel, back in 06 in the early 2000s, event marketing was a really transformative concept, right? It was, let's do an event, let's get people there, let's really think outside of the box. And to us now, these sort of social influencers are that next generation. Yeah, and then there's ways to do event activations, digital content, the whole bit. But the reason why I'm even talking about this because we're very bullish on social influencers. You're going to be seeing more and more and more of how do we engage these guys? How do we find these guys? How do we do deals with these guys? So what happened? It used to be when we were kind of pitching endorsement deals, it was, what does this guy look like? Is he the right age? Is he the right height, et cetera, et cetera? Now, everybody almost has a number attached to them, right? You can look at an influencer and go, how many Facebook followers does that person have? How many Twitter followers does that person have? Does this guy create YouTube? And also, with that digital data, you can be very precise and surgical with the audience that person has. If you want to hit up female gamers, if you want to hit up a certain aspect of car enthusiasts, that data is now prevalent and accessible. Now, another big thing too, and the reason why I say be careful is because the interesting thing about digital is it can be faked. You guys have probably heard of people buying fans, right? I'm not sure if any of you guys you're on Instagram, but it's kind of interesting to me. You'll find somebody on Instagram that maybe has 30,000 followers, but if you click on that person's image, there's only 10 people that liked it, right? That guy definitely bought his fans, right? In the same way, with digital influencers, engagement now becomes the more the important number. It's less about how big their audience is, and more how engaged are their audience. How many people are retweeting? How many people are sharing? How many people are commenting? And that's, again, a metric now that's kind of changed the game with these influencers. Cool. So what's interesting, again, and I touched upon it too, what's interesting about this new guard is that they're savvy. And from our perspective, they've built their following through content creation. I've looked at a bunch of the Facebook accounts for a bunch of dealerships. It's rather arduous to assign somebody to coming up with, what are we going to post today? What are we going to post tomorrow? Is there a game? Is there a fight? Is a car going to be released? That sort of content creation, as you guys probably know, is pretty challenging. One of the things that a lot of these social influencers have figured out is how to calendarize this stuff, how to really think about it and assist with, oh my God, what do we have to figure out to do on this Sunday, as an example, right? What's really great from our perspective too is they're a one-stop shop, right? You'll probably see some presentations about, hey, we're going to pay this guy to make this video, and then we're going to have to go advertise this video with another budget. The benefit of social influencers, you pay one person, right? They're not only going to make the video, but part of the reason why you're paying them is because you know what their audience is. And you know that you're reaching out to this person because they have the audience that you want to attract, right? These guys know the value of their networks. They're smart. The other thing we like about the new guard is that a lot of them came from nothing, meaning like they put a lot of time into building out these networks. It's not potentially like an athlete who could be like, hey, where's my check? Are we done? Cool, I'm out, right? So some things to kind of consider and process. Now we get really quickly into how do you do deals? And I wanted to go through this because I've seen it messed up so many times. In a quick way, we can kind of help guide this process. And my clicker. So to us, there's really 4 pieces whenever you're going to do some kind of deal like this. There's the chase, the actual contract, execution, and measurement. So with the chase, people can get hung up on this one exact person. This guy would be perfect, or this woman would be perfect. Never think that way. Get a big list. Because the reality is, that person might be too expensive, not fit with the calendar, or you talk to them, and they're lame, They're not feeling what you're trying to do. They would just rather you cut them a check, and that's really not that's not the sort of relationship you want to have with somebody like this. Pick people that are genuinely excited to work with you. And what that means is that when you get to the contract that's going to say you need to do X amount of social media posts on X amount of days, most likely they're going to go beyond that. The next piece is actually the contract. The devil is in the details. I've seen a ton of contracts where it's like, hey, we're going to pay you some money to do this. Do some social media posts, right? No. What you want to do is you want to spell out how many Facebook posts are you going to do? How many Twitter posts are you going to do? How many photos are you going to post? Is it a video that you're going to post? Spell out every single one of those pieces, work with that person, and put it in the contract, right? And also assign dates to when this stuff is going to happen, right? If you're dealing with appearances, which is definitely a function of this stuff, get it locked up in advance, because some of the bigger people, they're busy. So if you tell them tomorrow, hey, I have an event for you this Saturday, they're going to say, hey, I'm unavailable, right? Cool. This is, an example, too. I don't know if you guys are, employing this with your own social media efforts, but this sort of kind of calendarization of content and campaign, I would say is critical as part of the deal and thinking about stuff in general, right? Develop the calendar. When are you going to announce? What sort of continued social activity do you have? Build to a crescendo, and then also get into a close. It could be the release of you. It could be a number of things that you're trying to promote within, even internally, outside of doing an influencer deal. Think about messaging not as a one-time thing, but social media. You have to kind of reiterate the same message 3 or 4 different times with different words over a long period of time before something actually happens. So actually putting this stuff on paper and thinking about social media less of this is this day, this is this day, this is going to happen later. You have to think about things in the campaign format, right? So now you found the person, they've agreed, right? You're going to do something really interesting. Now they sign a contract. They will forget, not because they're not nice people, but part of a contract is to remind people what to do when, right? So what we feel is like, ensuring these guys are doing it and having a good dialogue with these influencers helps push the process. Definitely plan ahead for event activations and try a lot of creative ideas, right? Especially when it comes to micro content and engaging influencers for micro content. Try a lot of stuff. That's why I'm here. That's why this is Scion, right? And then finally, measurement. You'll see some other presentations where measurement is never something that should happen at the end. It should be something that's happening continuously. If you're doing a post, did it work? Not really. Well, let's not do that same post 3 days later. Let's change the copy. Let's change the image. Let's change the message, right? And most importantly, what we feel, especially on a local level, is once you've found something that's worked, try it with different people, but now you have a certain template that you can work with, right? So I kind of get into some case studies that give you a little bit of experience, or a little bit of visibility into something that I hope you can kind of take something away from. This is a case study about like traditional with a little bit of digital content. So, that's Joe Montana. You guys are, Bay Area people, you know who Joe is. So we brought Joe to a Japanese retailer called Uniqlo. It's one of the 4th largest retailers in the world. And their campaign was very specific. It was to launch a West Coast flagship store. What's interesting is not only, obviously Joe's pretty expensive, but they had a large media budget to actually promote their deal with Joe, right? So here's an example of some of the deal points. There was a 1-year name and likeness, meaning they could use Joe's photo and his name for a year to promote their products. And they also spent a bunch of money, right? They had out-of-home, they had bus shelters, they had billboards. That's an example of some of the creative. There was an event appearance. This was the opening of the store, right? All of this stuff, very well documented. Joe, here's what we're going to pay you for. Here's what we expect you to do. The interesting piece that we added a little bit of a change to a normal endorsement deal was we created digital video, right? Which was a really cool interview with Joe that was syndicated through a lot of different networks. And it really talked about, we paired up individual influencers with a certain product, right? So we paired Joe with this ultralight down, and this video was all over Uniqlo as an announcement on YouTube. So here's a very different idea that didn't have anything to do with paying one guy a big sum of money and then doing a lot of paid. I'm just trying to kind of give you guys visibility. I wonder where I point this thing. It doesn't like me. This guy is probably something you might not have heard of, but he's one of the biggest DJs in the world. His name is Tiesto. And we paired him with a company called SanDisk. And this was back in 2010. And at this time, in the presentation decks to our clients, we had to tell them what Facebook was. Can you imagine that? It's been like, 4 years? So imagine saying, hey, there's this thing called Facebook, you need to be on it, right? So I'm hoping some of this influencer stuff will strike that sort of a tone. But in essence, this was a more complicated deal in that this influencer, he created exclusive music and he did a bunch of global events, right? There was no paid media behind this. But what we leveraged was his 3 million Facebook followers at the time. Right? So instead of paying for media, we leveraged the media that he owned in essence. There was a huge, like I said, 3 million Facebook audience. But interestingly enough, whenever we touched down in an event, we would activate in stores regionally with the offer, right, as a marketing mechanism. We had localized POS in store, and we also included a sales partner VIP experience, where like salespeople that were really crushing it could attend his events for free. Now on a digital level, we work with a woman named Michelle Phan, who is, a huge YouTube celebrity, and this was like years ago. But the video that these guys collectively did together got 2.3 million views. And again, we didn't pay for that in terms of paying for media. We paid the artist to come together to come up with the concept, right? He did an official music video with one of the songs that he gave us. That had 1.5 million views on YouTube, right? And so in essence, like this was the largest PR story in SanDisk's history, and we employed no paid media at all. And at the end, it increased their sales by 30%. So a very, very different model, right? We were working with an influencer that already had a base, and that was the exact base we wanted. That's why we hired the guy, right? Cool. So this is like very high level before I kind of turn it off. How do you actually do this on a local level, right? Well, and even why, right? This is Scion. We want to come at you guys. It's basically I want to come at you guys with some out-of-the-box stuff. I think events are great, but the world of digital is so big, and I think when it comes to local influencers, their reach, you might not know who that person is now, but they can really, really drive, huge social growth for you because they already own an audience. So if they're helping drive that audience to you via the deal that you guys do together, that's a major benefit to you guys. Also, again, one of the hardest parts about social media is once you turn it on, it's never off. You have to have a calendar of social media until the end of the world, pretty much, right? And that's a daunting task. Work with people that are really good at this stuff, because they can combine not only the content creation part, but they're also, in essence, paid media, because they have an audience and they're promoting the content that you're building together to their audience. And most importantly, on a local level, these guys are inexpensive, right? Most of the time, if they're able to do something interesting with a dealership, that's great for them. That takes them to the next level. So how do you find local influencers, right? Well, first, you got to figure out who you're targeting and why, Secondly, there's a lot of influencer searches online, whether that be clout, follower wonk, even Google search, where you can specify keywords and you can specify locations, and it'll give you people that have a certain size audience within what you're specifying, right? Which gives you a great opportunity, even with social, to have a conversation with somebody, especially on something like Twitter. Hey, I heard you like cars and you're based out of Oakland. Do you want to come by? Let's hang out. Or we have this thing going on. It's in essence a way to kind of connect with people that have a voice already. So, to kind of, the deals component is what I want you to kind of think about is drive toward exclusive content. Drive toward finding who this person is, and something great. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute long video, but maybe it's something funny that they're doing in the dealership with one of your associates, right? Work collaboratively on something that's a little bit different, maybe a little bit out of the box. But again, it's, that guy's the expert on content creation. Most of the people, that are dealing with on a day-to-day basis are not, right? Post about, and this is an important thing too about social media, I feel. People kind of think that social media is all about when the thing is done, right? Hey, we did this video, and now it's done, let's promote it. Social media is actually about the process. You can have social media, hey, this guy just came in. He's at the dealership right now, right? Hey, we're working on this concept. That's the beauty of social media. People want to see process. They want to see things that are happening over time, right? A big part of this is develop a calendar with the influencer. Hopefully you guys are doing this internally as well, because calendars change the game. Once you can look at a month and you have big events on the month, right? Then you can say, well, we know this is coming up on the 3rd Saturday. Well, we can't just post 2 days before it. We need to be posting, on a weekly basis and ramping that up as we get to it. So calendars, if you guys aren't currently doing that, start, because it's great. And the other benefit of a calendar is now you can tie in social media on multiple verticals. Your Facebook, your Twitter, et cetera, now can be kind of organized in a way that again, is not about one thing happening, it's about a campaign, right? And also, finally, use the final content on all of your channels, right? Don't just think this has to live on this one thing. Think that it can live on all of your stuff. And that's, in essence, a good best practice in general. So great. So, to wrap it up, from my perspective, what I hope that I was able to share with you is really a love for the brand. It was a game-changing experience, not only for my business, but on a personal level. And I hope you guys can take some of that away, because what Sign, I think, has been able to build is pretty impressive. It takes a lot of companies a lot longer, and a lot more hard work than how Sign was able to kind of pull it off. So it's actually, as a fan of the brand, it's awesome, and I'm very happy that Joe invited me to actually, take up your time and actually talk, because it's great to know that Toyota as a brand is really getting behind Scion, because we think Scion's amazing, And what we're hoping is these next level things they were doing, with event marketing start to kind of open up certain ideas to you on a ground level. Another follow the correct steps as we outlined. And local influencers, you guys, instead of, think about it as part of your matrix, instead of just doing paid media that's maybe like a video that some guy made, think about, hey, maybe there's this local influencer, somebody that we can kind of tap that can not only make really compelling content, but also will guarantee us an audience to watch it. Thanks. We really mean it.